Reborn into the 1980s, I started out with a blizzard sealing off the mountains, penniless and buried in a mountain of bad debt. Even my childhood buddies thought this loser was definitely done for. But I went into the mountains empty-handed and not only wiped out a whole den of badgers worth a lot of money, I also picked up a wild boar whose organs had been hollowed out by an eagle for free. When I threw the bloody boar's head in front of my creditors, the whole village was dumbfounded. How did this good-for-nothing suddenly turn into a ruthless man? My name is Changdong. I was crouching in the crusted snow, my face red from the cold, and the breath I exhaled instantly froze into ice crystals. Beside me, Ergu was shivering with a cigarette in his mouth, wrapped up like a rice dumpling. It's freaking cold. The two of us stared fixedly at the mountain hollow ahead. It was a vast expanse of white, let alone wild boars. There wasn't even a ghost of a shadow. This was my second day after being reborn. In my previous life, I was a thoroughgoing gambling addict. I owed a mountain of debt and was blocked at my door by Li Laowai from the village, who had come to collect. My wife Wang Ho-hot took our 5-year-old daughter back to her parents' home, but on the way they ran into a sow with piglets, and the mother and daughter were chased into the small river at the village entrance and froze to death alive. When they were hauled out, my wife was still clutching 50 cents tightly in her hand. That was the family's last food money. She hadn't eaten for 2 days. I cried at her grave for 3 days and 3 nights. Later I quit gambling, quit drinking, went south to work, and step by step became the richest man in Jiangxing. But that thorn had been lodged in my heart for more than 30 years and had never been pulled out. What use was being filthy rich? What did it matter to be surrounded by beauties? In my heart, Ho-hot was my one and only white moonlight. Back then, she had been a beauty known across all the nearby villages, with suitors lining up. She saw that I was honest and decent and not bad-looking, and married me despite her family's opposition. I originally had a respectable job too, as a sales clerk at the supply and marketing cooperative. Later something happened at the cooperative, I was squeezed out, and from then on I never recovered, drinking and gambling all day long. Whenever I lost money, I'd go home and take it out on my wife and child, beating and cursing them. I was truly worse than an animal. On the day I was reborn, I slapped myself hard several times and made a deal with Li Laowai that he wasn't allowed to touch my wife and child for 10 days. Then I dragged Ergu up the mountain. This bastard was my childhood buddy. He talked a good game about loyalty, but if I hadn't promised to introduce my sister-in-law to him, he wouldn't have come out with me to suffer in this bitter midwinter cold, even if you beat him to death. Changdong, if this won't work, let's go back. Ma Sampang has a hunting rifle, and I'm on decent terms with him. Borrowing it to deal with that wild boar would be better than going empty-handed. He ground the cigarette, but into the snow, and said through gritted teeth, "Don't you know Ma Sampang and I have a grudge? It's just a lousy gun. When we get back, we'll make one ourselves." That bastard Ma Sampang throws his weight around in the village just because his father is the production team leader. Last time, I caught him hiding cards at the gambling table, and in shame and anger he slapped me more than a dozen times. I was a coward then and didn't dare fight back. He had a gun, and with his 1.8-meter frame, he beat my face bloody. Now that I've lived a second life, I'll settle this score sooner or later. You're bragging. Ergu simply didn't believe I could make a gun. With me here, let alone a 400-gene wild boar, even if a black bear came, we'd still take it down. As we were talking, Ergu suddenly shouted, "Look!" Several little black dots in the distance were moving slowly, 7 or 8 of them. The lead wild boar looked to weigh no less than 400 gene, and it had piglets with it. I tightened my grip on the boar spear and led Ergu around to a patch of uneven ground, where we crouched beneath a tree and watched. The villagers had set quite a few wire snares around this area, thin and soft, impossible for wild boars to see. Once caught, the more they struggled, the tighter they got. But after waiting for quite a while, that group of wild boars actually disappeared into the woods. The two of us stumbled through the snow toward them, when Ergu suddenly pounced at a rabbit and fell headfirst into the snow, his mouth and nose filled with snow. But I noticed a pile of branches beside the snowdrift. When I pushed them aside, a dark hole was revealed. A badger. This thing is both fierce and crafty, bigger than a rabbit, but smaller than a house dog, with sleek, glossy fur. Before hibernation, it lines its nest with dry grass and leaves. These branches were most likely discarded. Ergu, find some branches and block this hole. I'll go around back and look for the rear exit. Badgers love taking over mouse holes, and mouse holes lead in all directions, so we can't leave it a way out. I went around to the back and dug a few times, and sure enough, there was a small hidden hole. I took out some matches and lit a few cigarettes, took a deep drag, and stuffed the lit cigarettes into the hole. Cigarettes in the 1980s didn't have filters, and the smoke was strong and harsh. Before long, thick smoke came billowing out of the hole. Then, coughing sounds came from inside. I quickly slipped a burlap sack over the hole, and in less than 5 minutes, thumping sounds started coming from inside the sack. When I lifted it up to look, there were 5 badgers the size of rabbits. Li Ergu ran over, his mouth hanging open wide enough to fit an egg. Holy shit, you're really something. I knew what he was thinking. The old Li Changdong had been nothing but a useless wretch who only knew how to drink and beat his wife. And now, in just this short while, I had caught 5 badgers. How could he not be shocked? I pulled out my dagger and skillfully skinned and butchered them, stripping off 5 complete pelts in half an hour. These badger pelts were glossy and bright in color, excellent for making hats and coats, and they could fetch a good price on the black market. Changdong, it's snowing, let's hurry back. If the heavy snow seals off the mountain, we won't be able to find the way. Li Ergu panicked. I didn't get greedy either. I packed up our things and headed back. As we passed through a small grove, several eagles were circling overhead. Their wings spread several meters wide, and their claws like awls. Li Ergu's legs went weak, and I had to drag him along. When we got into the grove, we both froze. A wild boar weighing over 300 jin lay in the clearing, a bloody mess, covered with a thin layer of snow. Its hind leg had been caught in a snare, and its whole body had been hollowed out by the eagles. Its entrails were still steaming. It had died only recently. I pulled out my dagger and, in a few swift strokes, chopped off the pig's head. I hefted it in my hand. It had to weigh over 20 jin. We tied it up with rope, and the 2 of us dragged it back toward the village against the wind and snow. Meanwhile, my family courtyard was in an uproar. Ma Sanpong's wife, Du Chunmei, stood in the middle of the yard with her hands on her hips, spittle flying as she shouted, "Everyone, come judge this fairly. My family lost a big rooster this morning. I searched all over the village and couldn't find it. There's chicken feathers all over this yard, so this woman definitely stole it. Talk, where did you hide it?" Wang Hohat held the child in her arms, tears welling in her eyes. "Sister-in-law, I really don't know where your family's rooster is. I haven't even seen it." "Haven't seen it? If you didn't steal it, then where did these feathers come from?" "It must be because your deadbeat man still bears a grudge from the last time Samping beat him. So he stole my family's chicken for revenge." The more Du Chunmei talked, the more worked up she got, her triangular eyes glaring as she raised her voice and hurled abuse. Several neighbors muttered quietly, "This is going too far. She's bullying them just because the man of that family is useless." Exactly. Li Changdong may not be any good, but even if you gave him 10 times the nerve, he still wouldn't dare steal the Ma family's chicken. But no one dared step forward to mediate. Du Chunmei was a notorious shrew. People usually went out of their way to avoid her, so who would dare provoke her? "Sister-in-law, my family may be poor, but we wouldn't stoop to stealing your family's chicken. Where do you expect me to go find it for you?" Wang Hohat was so anxious that tears kept pattering down her face. "I don't care where you go look. Anyway, if my big rooster can't be found, none of your family will have it easy." Neighbor Sister Fong really couldn't stand it anymore and came in to persuade her. "Chunmei, we're all neighbors from the same village. Isn't it bad to make such a scene? Wang Hohat is honest and meek. How could she possibly steal a chicken?" Du Chunmei backhanded Sister Fong with a slap across the face. "This is between our 2 families. What the hell are you butting in for?" Sister Fong covered her face and didn't dare make a sound as she backed away. Du Chunmei ground her teeth and said viciously, "Wang Hohat, didn't your damned husband not come back last night? He must have stolen my big rooster and gone out drinking. I'm sitting right here today waiting for him to come back." Wang Hohat's heart skipped a beat too. Li Changdong really hadn't come back all night. The morning before yesterday, he had even sworn up and down that he was going up the mountain to hunt, and had smashed all the liquor bottles. Could he be lying to her again? Not daring to say a word now, are you? Look at your cheap face, and your child takes after you too. One look, and you can tell she's a little slut in the making. Du Chunmei's vicious gaze shifted to the child. My daughter was only 5 years old and had been malnourished for a long time, but her skin was snowy white, like a porcelain doll. Du Chunmei and her husband had been married for over 10 years without children, and when she saw this child, the evil fire of jealousy in her heart shot up at once. She reached out to pinch the child's cheek, and my daughter was so frightened that she burst into loud sobs. Wang Hohat quickly held the child and backed away. "What are you doing? If you've got a problem, take it out on me, not on the child." Smack! Du Chunmei slapped her across the face, and 5 swollen finger marks immediately rose on Wang Hohat's face. "You little vixen, Giving you face and you don't know your place. After stealing my chicken, you still think you're in the right. The more she spoke, the angrier she got, and she lunged forward to tear at Wang Hohat's clothes. With a rip, one sleeve was torn off, exposing a snow-white arm. A malicious gleam flashed in Du Chunmei's eyes. See, she's a total little fox spirit. With arms as white as snow, the kind that bewitches men. I'm stripping you naked today no matter what. Clutching the child, Wang Hohat backed away again and again until she was forced into a corner with nowhere to hide. Just then, my voice rang out. Stop. Good Lord, this big pig head has got to weigh over 20 Gene at least. Looks like the Li family has struck it rich. Didn't this guy go gambling? Where'd he get such a big pig head? Couldn't have stolen it, could he? When the villagers saw me and Li Ergu dragging the wild boar's head into the yard, they all started talking. I threw the pig head onto the ground, then dashed over in a few quick steps and stood in front of Wang Hohat, glaring at Du Chunmei. If you dare lay a finger on Debao, believe it or not, I'll make you pay dearly? Wang Hohat stared at me blankly. The man before her was completely different from before. In the past, he was timid and submissive in front of outsiders, but now he stood before her like a wall, instantly making her feel safe. Du Chunmei froze for a moment, then immediately turned arrogant again. What? So stealing my big rooster makes you justified now? Cut the crap. Who stole your chicken? Our family doesn't welcome you. Get the hell out. In my previous life, I was afraid of the Ma family's power, but in this life, I'm not putting up with them. You little bastard, how dare you curse at me? Being cursed at in front of so many people, Du Chunmei couldn't save face and came lunging at me, all claws and fangs. I slapped her across the face. You crazy shrew, coming to my house first thing in the morning to make trouble. Have you no shame? You dare hit me? I'll fight you to the death. Du Chunmei grabbed a shovel and was about to strike. I grabbed her wrist and squeezed hard, and the shovel clanged to the ground. Meeting my gaze, she shuddered, and her hand loosened instinctively. Why does this kid seem like a completely different person today? I slapped her again, making the corner of her mouth bleed, and she staggered back several steps. The onlookers were all dumbfounded. Who would have thought? That Li Changdong had this side to him? He even dared hit Du Chunmei. Wasn't he afraid of Ma Sanpang's retaliation? Did he take the wrong medicine? Wang Hohat hurriedly stopped me. Changdong, stop hitting her. Let it go. Let it go. She was afraid of retaliation from the Ma family. I knew what I was doing, so I didn't make another move. Du Chunmei wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth and viciously spat out. You little bastard. Just you wait. After saying that, she slunk away in embarrassment. Everyone, disperse. There's nothing to see. Several villagers left resentfully, and Li Ergu looked worried. Changdong, after making such a scene, how are you going to get by in the village from now on? I was even planning to help you borrow a gun, but now that's out of the question. Borrow what? Did I ever say I wanted to borrow his lousy gun? If anyone dares bully our family again, I'll deal with them all the same. I handed the sack to Wang Hohat. She opened it and saw 5 badgers. You really went up the mountain to hunt. Sister-in-law, the two of us went together. We stayed up in the mountains all night last night. Changdong caught 5 badgers, and we even roasted one to eat. Li Ergu quickly chimed in. Wang Hohat looked at me, and the hatred in her eyes seemed to have faded quite a bit. Didn't Debao want to eat meat? Daddy will cook some for you right now. I touched my daughter's little cheek, and the little one smiled until her eyes curved like crescents. I had Wang Hohat carry the child into the house, while I built a fire in the yard and boiled a pot of water. I pulled 2 badgers out of the sack and handed them to Li Ergu. Take them back and let your mother build up her strength. Changdong, with the relationship we have, why be so polite? If I tell you to take them, then take them. They're not for you. They're for your mother. Only then did Li Ergu accept them. All right, then I'll thank you on my old lady's behalf. Hurry back after dropping them off and eat some pig head meat. I threw the pig head into the pot. Wild boar bristles are thick and hard, much harder to handle than domestic pigs. After boiling it in hot water for a while, I fished it out and carefully scraped off the hair on the chopping board, then singed it over firewood once more. Only after cleaning it thoroughly did I chop it up. I divided it into several large chunks and put them in the pot to stew for more than 2 hours. It smelled damn good. Li Ergu was so greedy, he kept swallowing his saliva. He reached out, grabbed a piece, and stuffed it into his mouth. Even though it was so hot, he kept blowing on it. He still refused to spit it out. Aunt Lou from next door came over as soon as she smelled the aroma, standing at the doorway and craning her neck inside. Wang Hohat smiled and said, Aunt Lou, come in and sit down. I'll pack some for you to take back for the kids to try. I filled a whole basin with meat and ladled in a few spoonfuls of broth. This is the real essence. You can't just eat the meat alone. Aunt Lu leaned in and took a deep sniff, full of praise. This skill is way more fragrant than the braised meat shop in town. At dinner that night, there was only a big basin of meat on the table. Liurgu even poured the broth into his rice and mixed it up to eat, wishing he could lick the bowl clean. I stared at the meat in the basin, and suddenly a thought flashed through my mind. Hohot, do you think this flavor could be used to make money? Wang Hohot put down her chopsticks. Sell the meat? If it doesn't all sell the same day, it'll go bad, and if someone gets a stomachache, people might even think we poisoned them. Not sell meat, sell seasoning. I slapped my thigh. Braised meat tastes good entirely because of this mix. If we prepare the seasoning and take it out to sell, are we really going to worry about not finding buyers? Wang Hohot's eyes lit up, right? How did I not think of that? No sooner said than done. Before dawn the next day, I went to town and bought back a pile of spices, asking the shopkeeper to grind them into powder. I shut myself away at home and worked on it for 3 days, finally settling on the proportions. Meat stewed with this seasoning tasted exactly the same as the batch I made that day. When Aunt Lu heard there were ready-made seasoning packets, she shamelessly came to the door and asked for one. That very evening, the rich aroma of braised meat drifted out from next door, and half the village could smell it. As Wang Hohot watched me portion out the seasoning packets, she felt both excited and uneasy. When we go to town tomorrow, will people recognize what we're selling? Those restaurants in town all have their own master chefs. Who would buy into my amateur stuff? I patted her on the shoulder. Trust me, it will definitely make money. We barely slept a wink that night, and the next morning we got up early and headed straight to town with the seasoning packets. The bustle in town was on a completely different level from the village. Early in the morning, quite a few people were already eating breakfast outside. I looked around and set my sights on the home-style restaurant not far away. Before I could even speak after going in, a server stopped me. Sorry, it's not mealtime yet, and the chef hasn't come to work yet. I took a packet of spices out of my bag and placed it on the table. Please let your boss know that I'm here to talk business. Before long, a slightly chubby man with a sleek center part came out, smiling, though his eyes were wary. You too, we're just a small business here, only making simple home-style dishes. So we don't have any use for your spices. Why don't you try next door? He spoke politely, but his hands moved quickly, and the meaning was obvious. Please leave. I was mentally prepared. These days, information isn't well developed, and there are swindlers everywhere. People come around every day peddling miracle pills, so it's normal for him to be cautious. I stuffed the spices directly into his hand. This packet is for you, free of charge. If it doesn't work well, just pretend this never happened. If it works well, then we can talk. Just as the owner was about to refuse, the owner's wife came out from the back kitchen and interjected. It's free, so trying it won't hurt. Exactly, such a good thing falling from the sky, and you're still turning it away? I said with a smile. The owner hesitated for a moment, but still accepted it. I pulled Wang Hohot out, bought a few buns from the stall across the street, and slowly nibbled on them with hot water. We're just going to wait here? Wait. I have confidence in my spices. Today's turnover for that owner will definitely break the all-time record and reach a whole new high. As the sun set, Ziwei Homestyle Restaurant was still brightly lit. Sitting across from it, we could still smell the aroma drifting out from inside. I closed my eyes and felt the fragrance brought by those spices. Smell that? This is the taste of our future. Seeing that Li Changdong was still being improper even now, Wang Hohot brought the hammer down hard on his shoulder. Stop fooling around. The owner still hasn't come to find us. They had sat there for an entire day, and no one had even come over to talk to them. Before long, the owner's wife came out after seeing off the last table of customers and was surprised to find that the two of them had not left. Seeing that there wasn't a single person left on the street, she hurried over to them. Why are you sitting outside the door? Come on, come inside and have a cup of hot water. Li Changdong rubbed his hands together, his face glowing with a smile. We also wanted to see whether that seasoning packet could bring you business. At the mention of the seasoning packet, the owner's wife was immediately full of interest and reached out to cut him off. She walked to the door, made sure there wasn't a single person on the street, and then closed the front door. Just then, the owner came out carrying a bowl of rice. When he saw the two familiar figures there, he quickly set the bowl down. You must be laughing at me. I've been busy all day and only just sat down. I haven't even had time to take a single bite of food. Li Changdong was just about to exchange pleasantries when he saw the owner's wife interrupt the owner. At least you have something to eat. Look at what they're eating. Why don't you hurry to the kitchen and make us a few dishes? I'll chat with them. If this were before his rebirth, he wouldn't have been able to tell what the owner's wife intended, and might even have thought she was a nice person. But with his memories, He could tell at a glance that she was trying to curry favor with him. Next, they should be discussing the price of the spice packets. Sure enough, the landlady mysteriously leaned in close to the two of them. These spice packets of yours, you haven't given them to anyone else, have you? In business, the biggest taboo is for two people to use the same seasoning mix. If that happens, the spices you buy lose their value. Li Changdong and Wang Hohot exchanged a glance and smiled honestly. We mixed these at home and brought them over. Today we're only giving you one packet. If you don't find it useful, we might try other restaurants tomorrow. When the landlady saw that the two were trying to leave with the spice packet, even her tone rose several degrees. No, I want all of them. When she realized she had lost her composure, her face flushed a little, and she scratched her head somewhat embarrassedly. Your spice packets are the best I've ever seen. I absolutely won't allow a second person to use them. Name your price. Li Changdong turned to look at Wang Hohot, used his memory to estimate the current prices, and held up 5 fingers. 50 cents a packet. Beside him, when Wang Hohot heard Li Changdong ask an outrageous price, she gently tugged at his robe, seeming to want him to give up. At the price of 50 cents, they could even buy quite a lot of ingredients to take home and make a feast. Unexpectedly, Li Changdong remained unmoved, his eyes fixed tightly on the landlady's. Since she had shown such love for the spice packets, he couldn't be blamed for using this method to drive up the price. Sure enough, the landlady hesitated. 50 cents, that's a bit too expensive. For one serving of braised meat. You should think of it this way. On this whole street, you're the only one who can sell this braised meat, and the business will all be yours. Li Changdong switched the concept, saying the spice packets were unique to her shop alone. But he didn't mention that others could also come here to secretly learn the technique. A true master chef, as long as they taste it carefully, would definitely be able to tell what spices had been used in it. Next, they would only need to carefully figure out the proportions, and naturally, they could make exactly the same thing. Seeing how eagerly Changdong was to make a deal over the spices, the landlady didn't waste words with him and held up 3 fingers. 30 cents per portion of seasoning. That's my limit. 30 cents. Li Changdong sat down, pretending to be troubled, but his eyes never left the landlady's. He wanted to see even the slightest fluctuation in her gaze, because that would tell him that 30 cents might not actually be her bottom line. Unfortunately, the landlady's attitude was very firm, so Li Changdong could only stand up. At this price, I hope you won't tell anyone else. This patent is yours. When she heard that Li Changdong had relented, the smile on her face became especially obvious, and she stood up laughing. Then here's to a pleasant cooperation. Turning back toward the kitchen, she shouted, Old Li, how much longer are you going to fiddle around? Our honored guests are hungry. The landlady signaled for the two to sit there at ease, while she herself walked toward the kitchen. In this era, there weren't so many surveillance cameras, so Li Changdong didn't need to worry that what they said would be recorded. Wang Hohot looked utterly shocked. Do you know how much one packet of our spices costs to make? You actually sold them for 30 cents a packet. Li Changdong was just about to reply when he saw 2 people coming out of the kitchen carrying food. Since the matter had already been settled, they had no intention of staying for a meal. Seeing the 2 stand up, the landlady called for them to sit down. Don't stand there. Is something the matter? Li Changdong took out all the spice packets from his backpack and scattered them across the table. Each spice packet could only be used for 1 day. If reused the next day, it would turn sour and might make customers sick. A black-hearted merchant would surely have long been thinking about how many days 1 packet of spice could be used so as to save costs. Li Changdong deliberately wouldn't let them use it that way and brought up the trouble in advance. Well, let's calculate how much it is. From now on, however many spice packets like these you have, send them all to our place. We guarantee we'll take every last one. When Wang Hohot actually got the cash in hand, her face was filled with wild joy. She had never imagined that she would actually have a day to turn her life around. Looking at the sky outside, Li Changdong said goodbye to the 2 of them. They did not live in town, otherwise the 2 at home would surely cause an uproar. Arriving at the supply and marketing cooperative, they picked out quite a few daily necessities inside. These were things Wang Hohot used to only dare look at but not buy, and now they took them all home. Just as they were about to leave, the tip of his nose caught a faint smell of walnut pastry. He clearly remembered that his daughter had been craving this for years. Unfortunately, he had once been hopelessly addicted to gambling and never managed to buy a box to bring home before he died. Now, with money in his pocket, he was full of confidence. Back on the familiar street, the villagers were extremely curious about the 2 of them, not knowing why they suddenly had money. Wang Ergu and his daughter were leaning in the room, and when they saw the 2 return, They did not even have pleasant expressions. Li Changdong took out the thing hidden behind his back and waved it in front of the two of them. Look, what is this? When the two of them smelled the walnut pastry, they snatched the walnut pastry from his hand at once. Walnut pastry. There's walnut pastry to eat. Seeing how excited the two of them were, Li Changdong sat down in front of Wang Hohat with a face full of happiness. He had not seen such a warm scene for a long time. Wang Hohat slapped the two greedy little hands. You can't eat so much at night. Hurry up, wash your faces, and go to sleep. It's all yours. No one is going to take it from you. The next day, early morning, Li Changdong needed to go work in the fields to earn work points, while Wang Hohat stayed home with Wang Ergu and his daughter grinding spices. This was the livelihood of their whole family, and there was no room for the slightest carelessness. Seeing that Wang Hohat stayed home all day and never went out, Du Chunmei was green with envy. Seeing Li Changdong busy off to the side, she quietly walked over to him. Wang Hohat really married well. She doesn't even have to come down and work. Her words were dripping with sarcasm, and some others even tilted their heads to look over, seeming to think she had a point. Everyone else was working here, yet Wang Hohat alone had not come. With the focus falling on him, Li Changdong was not polite with them and wiped the sweat from his forehead. Shouldn't you blame your Ma-san for not working hard enough? Otherwise, you could also sit at home and bask in the sun. Du Chunmei thought about it carefully, and that did indeed seem to make sense. If she could find a husband she was satisfied with, how could she possibly be working desperately in a place like this just to earn work points? Before long, Wang Hohat saw that the sun had reached directly overhead and patted Wang Ergu and his daughter beside her. You two follow the method I taught you and grind it carefully for me. You mustn't be lazy. Seeing Wang Hohat leave, the two naturally behaved very obediently and agreed. When she arrived at the work site, Wang Hohat waved the flatbread she had prepared in her hand. Come eat. When both husband and wife were out in the fields, all they had with them to eat were those few buns they carried along. Watching how loving Li Changdong and Wang Hohat were, Du Chunmei was full of envy and looked toward Ma-san. Just look at them. You don't even have the ability to let me enjoy life, so what good are you? Seeing the two of them arguing from afar, Li Changdong and Wang Hohat merely smiled it off and did not say anything more to them. Quarrels like this happened from time to time, and an outsider could hardly step in to mediate. Before long, those spices had already become well known in town. Even people from some nearby villages knew that there was a braised meat shop in town with an irresistible aroma. The village chief's son had not eaten much good food in the village, and hearing there was such a place in town, he eagerly gathered his energy to go have a look. He had only just arrived at Ziwei Homestyle Restaurant when the aroma fiercely stirred his taste buds. It just so happened that he was on good terms with the boss's son, Li Yukai. After a few questions, he understood that this secret recipe had been provided by Li Changdong. After learning the truth, his face turned extremely gloomy. With someone making money like this, he actually planned to bypass us? Bold brat. The village chief's son, Lu Deshing, returned to the village and immediately went to find his father, telling him the whole story truthfully. Sure enough, the village chief was equally furious. If the village produced a capable person, they would naturally be very pleased. But what they did not need was this kind of selfish man who kept things hidden and only made money for himself. From that day on, Li Changdong was assigned to another area. This barren land was not only difficult to dig, even the sun was 10 times more scorching. Li Changdong could clearly feel that he was being treated differently, yet he could not figure out how he had offended them. Left with no other choice, he told Wang Hohat about what he had been going through, hoping to get some analysis from her. But as it happened, she could not make sense of it either, and pondered for a long while. Could it be that day, in front of Du Chunmei? No, that shouldn't be it. The village chief should know his limits. It couldn't be because of that. After thinking it over and over, he still could not grasp what the village chief was thinking. He did not want to keep enduring this suffering. He held out his hand in front of Wang Hohat. Give me some money. When she heard that Li Changdong wanted money, her face filled with wariness. You're going to again? What are you thinking? He turned to look at Wang Ergu and his daughter playing behind them, his face full of a happy smile. With you all, there's no way I'll repeat my past mistakes. I'm planning to buy some gifts and go see the village chief to ask exactly how I've offended him. If I don't get this cleared up, there'll be plenty more suffering in the future. Sure enough, when Wang Hohat heard Li Changdong say this, she nodded somewhat embarrassedly and took out the money the two of them had painstakingly saved. They went to the supply and marketing cooperative and bought some common gifts, then carried them to the entrance of the village chief's courtyard. Honestly, in the whole village, only the village chief's front gate looked imposing. Bang bang. He pounded hard on the door and walked inside, wearing a fawning smile as he presented the gifts in his hand to the village chief. Seeing Li Changdong come in, village chief Lu Shifa quickly made room and brought him inside. Changdong, you've come to see me. I suppose you're here to ask for a favor, right? Looking at the gifts by his feet, how could he not know that Li Changdong had come to ask for his help? Li Changdong saw that there was no one else in the room, so he did not beat around the bush and said with a light laugh, I have a question I'd like to ask the village chief. Lu Shifa, however, was quite willing to play teacher to others, and sat down across from him. Oh, let's hear it. I just happen to want to listen too. My work has been getting more and more complicated lately, and I don't know whether I've offended you somehow. Maybe I'm just a careless person who doesn't watch what he says. I don't know what I did wrong, but apologizing first should certainly be fine. When Lu Shifa heard Li Changdong complain that the place he worked was bad, his brows had already furrowed deeply. This land is divided equally among everyone. We would never make things difficult for someone for no reason. Could it be that the plot you happen to be assigned is just like this? He did not reveal the truth behind it, and instead made Li Changdong's thoughts even more tangled. If this was never brought out into the open, then all the work points he earned every day would seem somewhat unnecessary. Just relying on the money from those spices, they would probably be able to leave this village before long. Seeing Li Changdong's darkening and brightening expression, Lu Shifa walked to his side. Look, I still have something to take care of at the east end of the village, so go ahead and get busy. I was just about to leave anyway. The order to leave had already been given. If he kept sitting there, it would seem rather impolite. The gifts had already been given, and taking them back into his hands would make him look too stingy. When he returned to the courtyard, Wang Hohot hurried over to him. How did it go? Did the village chief say anything? Li Changdong shook his head thoughtfully, his eyes unintentionally sweeping over the spices. He vaguely felt that this trouble was brought about by those spices. As for how much profit there really was, only they knew best in their hearts. At the village chief's house, Lu Shifa closed the front gate and looked at Lu Dushing hiding on the second floor. Dushing, come down. Dad has something to ask you. Hearing Lu Shifa's words, Lu Dushing hurried downstairs, wearing an obedient smile on his face. I believe you should have already heard what Li Changdong just said. What exactly is going on? Lu Dushing spilled everything about the spice recipe at once, making it clear that he had not reported this matter to the people in the village. With enormous profits clearly right in front of him, he still had no way to get his hands on them. When Lu Shifa learned that what Li Changdong said was indeed done by Lu Dushing, he was furious. That recipe was something he worked out himself. You're driving him into a dead end. Lu Dushing understood that his old man always feared trouble from every direction in whatever he did, and his face was full of disdain. He picked a day when they were out in the fields earning work points, and came alone to Li Changdong's side. When he saw Lu Dushing come here, how could he not know that Lu Dushing had been sent by the village chief? He deliberately propped himself up with the farm tool in his hand and wiped his sweat. Since you've come here, you must have something to say to me, right? Sure enough, hearing Li Changdong say this, Lu Dushing chuckled and nodded. That's right, I do have something to say to you. You're quite perceptive. There wasn't even a bit of cover from the trees here, so he was unwilling to talk about those matters in this spot. He pointed with his chin toward the shade of a tree on the other side. Come with me. I'll give you a chance. Li Changdong understood that the recent mistreatment he had suffered was very likely caused by Lu Dushing. Without showing it, he took his farm tool and followed behind, and the two of them stood under the shade of the tree. I heard you're selling a kind of spice at Ziwei Homestyle Restaurant. Is that true? Hearing that Lu Dushing had finally shown his true colors, Li Changdong was rather at ease, and admitted it. That's right, it was passed down in our family from our ancestors. With just that one sentence, he was reminding him that such a recipe could not possibly be handed over to anyone else. The people in the village attached great importance to what had been left behind by their ancestors. If it were handed over to others, that would be disrespectful to one's own forebears. Yet Lu Dushing's face was full of contempt, and he let out a cold snort. If you give me that spice recipe, from now on I'll secretly add a few extra entries to your work points. Anyway, all this will be handed over to the village chief in the future. And for him, adding a few strokes on a blank sheet of paper was simply a trivial matter. Little did he know that Li Changdong had never intended to hand over the recipe, and shook his head. This recipe was passed down by our ancestors. If you need it, feel free to use it to stew meat. I definitely won't keep secrets. Seeing that Li Changdong refused a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit, Lu Dushing gradually darkened in the face. You dare offend me? Seeing that there was no one else around, he took a few steps forward and leaned close to his ear. Remember this, Without us, you're nothing. Since he could add entries to the work points book, he could just as easily reduce them. After working hard all day, only to have none of his work points recorded, just thinking about it was enough to make one collapse. Li Changdong, on the other hand, still stood by his position, shouldered his farm tool, returned to the field, and continued working. Fine, you've done very well, kid. I'd like to see how long you can keep acting tough. Just as he was about to leave, he noticed Ma San in the distance staring at Li Changdong the whole time. Recalling the quarrel from a few days ago, he felt that those two families had always been at odds. He was not only going to record fewer work points for Li Changdong in the work points book, but even have Ma San ostracize him, making it impossible for him to stay here. After suffering a whole morning of pent-up grievance, he looked up and saw Wang Ho-hot bringing over several big white steamed buns. Looking at the refined flour buns in Wang Ho-hot's hands, Ma San said in a mocking tone, "Oh, aren't these buns made with refined flour? Your family must be quite wealthy." As soon as those words were spoken, quite a few scheming people took note of them. As the saying goes, it's not just thieves stealing that you should fear, but thieves setting their sights on you. That one sentence made them the target of everyone's criticism. Seeing them speak so rudely, Wang Ho-hot walked over to Li Changdong's side. What on earth is going on? Why are the people in the village? He took a fierce bite of the steamed bun. He pointed in the direction of home with his chin. Go back first. We'll talk tonight. If they went looking for trouble with them now, that would be exactly what they wanted. At present, only the village chief's son knew about the spices. No one else knew they were selling spices. Before long, Li Changdong came back through the door, dragging his exhausted body. His body was not only filthy, even his clothes were soaked with sweat. It really felt awful to be targeted by others. He couldn't even have a single peaceful day. Go close the door. Let's go back to the room and talk about what happened during the day. Wang Ho-hot understood what Li Changdong meant, nodded, and followed him back into the room. How much money do we have left? When she heard Li Changdong ask about money, her expression immediately became extremely wary, as if she thought he was going back to his old ways again. Don't be afraid. Just tell me directly how much money is left. There is no future in this village. We need to get things together and move to the town to make a living. He had already had enough of life in this village. Sure enough, hearing that Li Changdong planned to live in town, Wang Ho-hot nodded in agreement. I've long been fed up with them targeting you. We need to leave this place. Looking at Wang Ergu and his daughter resting on the bed, Li Changdong felt tremendous pressure. He couldn't possibly rely entirely on those spices for the two children's future tuition. Besides, if that kind of spice encountered a master chef, it might be reverse engineered. He couldn't gamble on it and could only choose to find another way. As the saying goes, a tree dies when moved, but a person thrives when they move. As long as one has ideas, you can establish yourself anywhere. Seeing that Li Changdong had not spoken for a long time, Wang Ho-hot pushed open the door and poured him a basin of hot water for his feet. After a whole day of hard work, his feet were covered in calluses. Soaking them in hot water would make resting easier. At the moment, Li Changdong was thinking about one thing. If he didn't earn work points, how should he live in the future? Fortunately, the era he had come to was one where every inch of land was precious, and no money-making industry had yet fully emerged. As long as he could think of it, he could become the first to reap the benefits. Closing his eyes, he looked at Wang Ho-hot beside him. Get some rest early. I'm going out tomorrow. Wang Ho-hot already believed that Li Changdong would not gamble, and her face was full of smiles. Do you need money? I can give you some. He hadn't planned to take money when going out, but he was afraid he might come across something he needed, so he simply decided to take some. Anyway, she didn't need money staying at home, and if he took it with him, it could serve in an emergency. Lying on the bed, he thought of the enormous food delivery network of later generations, and something stirred faintly in his heart. Don't be fooled by how many people are working in the fields. There are still plenty of rich people living lives of luxury. They often share one characteristic. They don't like going out and prefer lying at home playing games. And food delivery could solve all their problems. Earning the first pot of gold would be no problem at all. Beside him, seeing that Li Changdong had his eyes open and had not fallen asleep for a long time, Wang Ho-hot gently stroked his face. Get some rest early. We can think about the future later. Li Changdong pretended to agree and quietly closed his eyes, while in his mind, he was building that vast map of his food delivery network. Before long, the rooster crowed. Li Changdong sprang up from the bed in one swift motion. He did not hurry off to the fields to earn work points, but instead chose to head to the state-run market. After all, with petty villains like Lu Dashing causing trouble over the work points, After a full day of labor, he might very well end up with nothing. Rather than that, it might be better to see whether he could complete his plan ahead of schedule. When he arrived at the entrance of the state-run market, he found quite a few people coming and going, carrying a dazzling array of goods in their hands. And in his eyes, all of those goods were business opportunities, each one capable of becoming his first bucket of gold. The din of noise and hawking was endless. Just as Li Changdong was about to walk in, a somewhat familiar voice came from beside his ear. Following the sound, he saw Qin Yin, the proprietress of Ziwei Homestyle Restaurant, slowly walking over, with quite a lot of fresh vegetables dangling from her hands. What a coincidence. I thought just now that I had seen wrong, but I didn't expect it really was you. Turning to look at the market behind him, a crafty smile appeared on her face. You must be here to buy spices and seasonings. Do you need me to take you there? Her hidden agenda was far too obvious. With the sharp eye of an old hand like Li Changdong, how could he possibly fail to see through it? Trying to make his smile look as natural as possible, he waved his hand lightly. That won't be necessary. I just happened to be looking around inside. I've never strolled through the state-run market before, and since it wasn't easy to come here this once, I can't very well not take a careful look around. Besides, Qin Yin was obviously here to fish for the recipe, so how could he let her get her way? Seeing that her little scheme had been discovered, Qin Yin did not look particularly embarrassed. Instead, she remained poised and gracious. Since we happened to run into each other, I'll settle the spice money from the day before yesterday with you. But you mustn't sell those spices to anyone else. It wasn't easy to build up the reputation of our family's braised meat, and I can't allow others to copy the same path. Seeing that Qin Yin was extremely seasoned in the way she handled herself and affairs, Li Changdong did not stand on ceremony with her and took the spice money. This way, he would also have an explanation when he went home to Wang Hohot. Otherwise, if he bought too many things, she would very likely suspect that his old bad habit had flared up again. Seeing that the spice money had been taken, Qin Yin pointed toward the entrance with her chin. We still have things to do at Ziwei Homestyle Restaurant, so I won't disturb you any longer while you stock up. You're always welcome to come eat with us. With a recipe for spices like this, you could throw your weight around in any restaurant. Not to mention just one meal. I'm afraid there would even be people willing to spend a great deal of money to keep you supplied with meals long term. Li Changdong watched Qin Yin leave and was just about to head farther inside, when he saw quite a few people quietly gathering off to one side. Listening carefully, it seemed there were sounds of beating and cursing coming from within. Having lived a second life, this was exactly the kind of thing he hated running into the most. With a grim face, he pushed through the crowd and went inside. There he saw a gaunt old farmer lying on the ground, arms spread wide as he desperately protected the vegetables he had worked so hard to grow. Standing in front of him was a man in an administrator's uniform, repeatedly bringing down the club in his hand on the old farmer. The onlookers only had the courage to watch, but not the courage to speak up for the old farmer. An administrator at the state-run market was already considered a very powerful official. If anyone offended him, even their little stall might not survive. I told you not to sell this expired produce. Get lost. The administrator cursed loudly and showed no mercy with his feet either. Several fine heads of Napa cabbage were stomped into mush one after another, making Li Changdong's anger surge up. In this era, when people could barely ensure food and clothing, there was actually someone relying on his position to waste food. Seeing that the iron pipe in the administrator's hand was about to come down again, Li Changdong grabbed it hard. Wait, these vegetables are pretty good. Seeing some blind fool come out to make trouble, the administrator swept a disdainful gaze over the clothes on Li Changdong's body. Plain cloth and coarse garments, with nothing particularly special about them. He gave a cold snort. Pretty good? Then why don't you buy all of them? Seeing that Li Changdong didn't speak for a long while, the administrator shouted loudly to everyone present. If you people eat these vegetables and get an upset stomach, won't you come looking to cause trouble for me? I absolutely cannot allow this kind of black sheep to exist. Seeing that he was about to start punching and kicking the old farmer again, Li Changdong shouted, Enough. Add up all the vegetables together. I'll take all of them. In these times, there was no such thing as mobile stalls. But if one could proactively push a cart to the nearby residential compounds, sales would surely not be bad. Besides, these vegetables looked extremely good, and there was even quite a bit of dirt still clinging to them. This obviously meant they had just been pulled from the ground. So how could anyone say they weren't fresh? When the old farmer heard that Li Changdong was willing to buy all of his vegetables, he stood up with a face full of delight. Why you mean that? Weigh them and see how much it is, and help me pack them into bags. An old farmer couldn't carry much goods, and with Li Changdong's strength alone, He could carry all of these vegetables himself. Beside him, when the manager saw Li Changdong openly opposing him, his expression became especially ugly. He was so angry that even his body trembled, and his eyes were fixed tightly on him. "Good kid, you've really got some nerve. I hope you'll still dare to come to our place to buy supplies in the future." Watching the manager leave, Li Changdong knew he had thoroughly offended him. The old farmer carefully watched the manager's back and moved closer to Li Changdong. "Young man, can I ask what you do?" Seeing his confused look, the old farmer quickly explained himself. "Please don't misunderstand. I'm just worried that the manager might affect your future work." Don't be fooled by his age. Being able to buy all the vegetables at once already counts as giving him the greatest respect. Li Changdong casually took the vegetables from the old farmer's hands and said with a hearty smile, "If you have this kind of fresh vegetables in the future, you can bring them directly to me." He patted his pocket, only then remembering that he had not made his own business cards. "Ziwei Homestyle Restaurant. Give my name, and they will deliver these vegetables to me." When the old farmer heard that Li Changdong owned such a homestyle restaurant, he finally relaxed and didn't dwell on the matter any further. After the old farmer left, Li Changdong sighed and walked toward the manager's office. As long as he wanted to do takeout business in the future, he definitely could not afford to offend the people in this state-run market. Though the market manager couldn't make decisions in other matters, stopping him from entering the vegetable market would be no problem at all. Not long after, Li Changdong arrived at the door of the market manager's office and knocked lightly. Sure enough, a very muffled voice came from inside. "Come in." When he saw Li Changdong come in carrying a large bag of vegetables, his expression became especially unpleasant, and he spoke with mockery. "Yo, isn't this the big buyer who bought up all the vegetables? What brings you here to grace me with your presence?" Li Changdong looked around and, seeing that no one had noticed him come in, quietly put the vegetables on the floor. "These are all homegrown vegetables. Please take them home and have a taste. When I come next time, I'll also bring you some local specialties from our place." The manager discreetly looked at the large bag of vegetables on the floor and found that the vegetables in it were definitely the best-looking ones. Seeing that he was so tactful, the manager did not make things difficult for him and patted him on the shoulder. "You're a good kid, respectful to the old and caring for the young. If there's anything you can't find in this market in the future, just come to me." After flattering him a few times, Li Changdong backed away and closed the office door, while secretly cursing him as a bloodsucker in his heart. Accepting bribes was something that had existed throughout the ages, and he had to thoroughly understand the way of it. Looking at the several large bags of vegetables in his hands, he felt that carrying them over just like this would look too shabby. Selling things required neatness and freshness. If at first glance they didn't whet the appetite, naturally very few people would buy them. In such a large town, probably only Ziwei Homestyle Restaurant had the ability to provide him with a handcart. It just so happened that he also needed to discuss the old farmer's matter with them. So he couldn't very well let someone drop the goods off inside without even giving them a heads up. When he arrived at the entrance of Ziwei Homestyle Restaurant, he happened to run into Wang Ho-hot, who had come to deliver spices. Looking closely, Wang Ho-hot had unexpectedly brought along 2 tagalongs. When Wang Ho-hot saw Li Changdong coming from the street corner, she hurried forward and took a few bags from him. "What are you? Go in first, I'll tell you in a bit. Anyway, this matter has to be told to the restaurant owner, so rather than saying it twice, it's better to have them sit together and say it all at once." Wang Ho-hot stepped aside and looked at Wang Ergu and her daughter behind her. The two of them were bored at home, and since they weren't out in the fields earning work points, I brought them along to broaden their horizons. Having grown this big without even leaving the village entrance was somewhat embarrassing to mention. Lifting the door curtain, the 4 of them walked in together. The auntie who was picking vegetables saw them coming and shouted toward the back kitchen, "Boss lady, the god of wealth is here." When Li Changdong and Wang Ho-hot heard themselves compared to the god of wealth, they exchanged a glance and gave a wry smile. Before long, the boss lady came out from inside holding a rag and immediately noticed the vegetables in their hands. You're not planning to open a restaurant yourselves, are you?" With Li Changdong's spice-making skill, if he really intended to open a restaurant, all of them would probably go hungry. Seeing how frightened the boss lady looked, Li Changdong waved his hands repeatedly. "Well, I just ran into an old farmer being bullied at the restaurant, so in one go I bought all his vegetables. And later I'll need to borrow a handcart from you." When the boss lady heard that the 2 of them had no intention of opening a restaurant, she let out a deep sigh of relief. "Of course, the handcart is parked in the alley by our restaurant. You can push it away anytime." Seeing that the matter between the 2 of them had been settled, Wang Hohot opened the black bag from her arms. These spices. Seeing Wang Hohot open the spices in front of quite a few customers, the boss lady quickly tied the bag shut. Looking mysteriously at the others. Come. You come with me to the back kitchen. I'll settle the payment for you there. These spices counted as their exclusive secret. If others found out, quite a few people would probably come offering high prices to buy them. With competition involved, wanting to buy this bag of spices for a mere 3 mao would not be easy. Seeing Wang Ergu and her daughter following behind Wang Hohot, Li Changdong beckoned to Wang Hohot. I'll take the two of them to look around the other residential compounds. You wait here for us to come back. The boss lady's attention was already completely on the spices, so how could she have any mind to care about Li Changdong? She waved her hand. Lunch is on us. Don't refuse. Arriving at the street corner in the back courtyard, he neatly arranged the vegetables in his hands on top. Then he casually got some water from the nearby tap and sprinkled it over them. At a glance, the vegetables looked extremely fresh and eye-catching. Only vegetables like these would make people want to buy them. Having never been to town before, for a moment he didn't know which residential compound would be most suitable to go to. Looking around, he pointed with his chin toward Jixiang Garden not far away. Let's go. There's a gatekeeper there. I believe the people inside are either rich or noble, and there should be quite a few who are keen on eating this kind of fresh vegetables. Wang Ergu and her daughter supported the handcart, looking a bit like they were helping. Just as they arrived at the entrance to Jixiang Garden, a man in a security uniform came out holding a baton and stopped in front of the handcart. Wait, what's going on with you people? Don't you see this is a residential area? The state-run vegetable market is over there. He mistook them for country bumpkins who had just entered the city and had not even found the right gate. Li Changdong rubbed Wang Ergu's head, casually tore off a bag from the side, put 3 or 4 large round cabbages into it, and walked up to the security guard. These were all just picked from the fields. There's no place for us in the state-run vegetable market. We'll leave as soon as we've sold out. Seeing how fresh the vegetables were, the security guard, he also looked around and saw that there really weren't many people around the residential complex. He touched his nose and lowered his voice to the minimum. Go in through the side gate and say you're delivering vegetables, but don't stay inside too long. When Li Changdong saw the security guard reveal the secret of Jixiang Garden, he quickly agreed and pulled the handcart in through the side gate to slip into the complex. Sure enough, there were quite a few elderly men and women already retired in this complex. When they saw these freshly pulled vegetables, they crowded around, trying to pick out the one they liked. Seeing that these elderly men and women had no sons or daughters by their side, Wang Ergu gently pushed his daughter in front of them. As it happened, his daughter's porcelain doll face was deeply loved by these elders. And his daughter was no slouch either. Sweet words kept popping out of her mouth one after another. Simply a born business prodigy. In just a few minutes after they came in, the handcart was completely empty. Li Changdong wiped the fine sweat from his forehead and counted the money in his hand, only to discover that he had actually earned a full double and more. This delivery business really was workable. The only question was whether he could open up such a vast network. Candied hawthorn skewers. Just as he was about to push the handcart away, the voice of a street vendor came from beside his ear. Wang Ergu and his daughter's gazes seemed to freeze. Both of them looked toward the vendor at the same time, swallowing mouthful after mouthful of saliva. Li Changdong understood what the two were thinking. He picked a few bills from the money and put them into Wang Ergu's hand. Each of you go buy one and come back, only one each. Wang Ergu had been hoping Li Changdong would agree, and he pulled his daughter toward the vendor. Taking this opportunity, Li Changdong dragged the handcart out of the complex. At the entrance, the security guard saw that they had emptied everything off the handcart at lightning speed, his face full of shock. You're way too fast. Next time you have vegetables this good, remember to save a bag for me. Don't be fooled by how many vegetables there are in the state-run vegetable market. The vast majority are transported in from other places. By the time they end up in their hands, at least 4 or 5 days have passed. No matter how good the vegetables are, they can't withstand the passage of time. Ordinary people also want to eat vegetables this fresh. Before long, Wang Ergu and his daughter came over holding candied hawthorn skewers, their faces full of satisfaction. Li Changdong pointed at the handcart with his chin. Come on, sit on it, and I'll push you over there. In this era, there weren't so many rules, so Li Changdong didn't need to rigidly stick to convention. He took them along the road. As he pushed the handcart past this vegetable market, the people inside looked full of surprise, seeming to discuss whether he was throwing away these vegetables or selling them. Li Changdong was neither related to them nor connected to them in any way, so he certainly wasn't going to explain so much for no reason. When he returned to the area around the restaurant, there were quite a few thug-looking people who saw them bring the handcart back. Li Changdong worried that these people might sneakily make off with the handcart, so he went over to the old men chatting nearby. Please help me keep an eye on that handcart. The old men were wholeheartedly absorbed in playing Chinese chess, so how could they have the mind to bother with him? They waved their hands. Don't come here and disturb our chess game. Just as he was feeling troubled, the cobbler repairing shoes not far away slowly walked over. You'd do better asking me than asking them. Look at me, strong and sturdy, and I'm familiar with this whole area. Seeing him show off his biceps, Li Changdong fumbled a banknote out of his clothes, not knowing whether it was appropriate, and stuffed it into his pocket. What's your name? Help me keep watch over it for a while. Wang Yi. I usually repair shoes over there, and I leave at 8 p.m. After learning that he wouldn't leave until the evening, Li Changdong naturally agreed. Leading the two of them, he arrived at Ziwei Homestyle Restaurant, just in time to see Wang Hohat and the proprietress Qin Yin chatting. Qin Yin saw Li Changdong come in and turned toward the kitchen. Old Li, quick, put the wok on. Our god of wealth is back. Seeing that they planned to keep him for lunch, he had no intention of staying and declined repeatedly. We have something to take care of when we go back later, so we won't be staying here for lunch. He shot Wang Hohat a look, and she immediately understood, rolling the black bag on the table into a bundle and gripping it in her hand. When she saw that both Wang Ergu and her daughter were holding a candied hawthorn skewer, she couldn't help but scold with a smile. I told you to take them out to sell vegetables, and you bought them this kind of thing. Aren't you afraid they'll get cavities at such a young age? At home, they usually only get things like big steamed buns, so of course they want a change of taste when they're out. The temptations in town were far more than just this little bit. Only buying them candied hawthorn skewers was already being quite restrained. Seeing that they insisted on leaving, Qin Yin had no choice, and let out a sigh. Next time you have spices, be sure to come to us. He casually agreed and led the three of them out of the restaurant. On the way back, his daughter stared at the roast duck shop not far away with a face full of longing. In those days, people could usually only buy such meat and fish during the new year. Ordinarily, they had no such chance. Wang Hohat saw the look in her daughter's eyes and smelled the aroma of roast duck drifting through the air, swallowing as well. If you want to eat it, we'll buy it. Come with me. When Wang Ergu and his daughter heard that Li Changdong was buying roast duck for them, the smiles on their faces were unmistakable, and a burst of cheers erupted from their mouths. We're going to eat roast duck. When they arrived in front of the roast duck shop, Wang Hohat discreetly tugged gently at Li Changdong's arm. Roast duck is a bit expensive. How about I go home and cook each of them a bowl of noodles? I can crack an egg into each bowl. That was already the best meal she could think of, and it made Li Changdong feel even more heartbroken. In his previous life, he had gambled away all the money, dragging them down until they couldn't even afford one meal with meat. Now that he had finally been reborn, if he still made them unable to afford meat, then he wouldn't deserve to be human. He gently wrapped an arm around Wang Hohat's waist, a faint smile on his face. If the children want to eat it, we'll buy it. If we don't have money, we'll earn it. It's no big deal. He looked at the fattest roast duck in the display case. Wrap that one up for me. Suddenly, he noticed that Wang Hohat hadn't said a word for quite a while. He turned to look at Wang Hohat beside him, only to see that she was staring at the meat pies in the display case. In the village, pies were usually filled with a bit of pickled vegetables. No one would put minced meat inside. Seeing that she had lived her whole life so cautiously, Li Changdong pointed at the meat pies nearby. Please give me one of those too, and put it on the bill together. When Wang Hohat saw that Li Changdong had noticed where she was looking, her face flushed a little. I don't want that. It must not taste good, too greasy. Even though it was clearly something she wanted to eat, she insisted on saying she didn't like it. Li Changdong understood that mindset very well. Before long, the clerk brought out the two items and placed them in his hands. Li Changdong waved the roast duck in front of his daughter and Wang Ergu. You two little gluttons. We'll eat it when we get back later. He then placed the meat pie in Wang Hohat's hand, signaling for her to use it to fill her stomach first. Following him, although she couldn't have lavish meals every day, he could at least always fulfill her wishes. Wang Hohat looked at Li Changdong placing the meat pie in her hand and let out a soft murmur. Before long, the two of them carried a roast duck back to the courtyard. The villagers were very curious about their family. They clearly hadn't seen them earning work points, yet the things they bought back were very expensive. Some even felt that Li Changdong wasn't easy to fool, and specifically sought out Wang Hohat, hoping to get the answer they wanted from her. Seeing how kind the people in the village were to them, Wang Hohat's face flushed with shyness. Li Changdong knew they were all here to fish for information, so he waved them away. We won't be keeping you for lunch. You've been busy all day and still haven't eaten anything. Sure enough, seeing that Li Changdong had already given them the hint to leave, the villagers could only back away and depart. The sizzling roast duck was set on the table, placed in front of Wang Ergu and his daughter. The two exchanged a glance, then pulled off the duck legs and stuffed them into their mouths, tearing into them. Seeing how inconsiderate the two of them were acting, Li Changdong showed a trace of reproach on his face. Why didn't you ask whether anyone else wanted some? Seeing that Li Changdong intended to admonish them, Wang Hohat smiled and waved her hand. Just seeing them eat these things is enough to satisfy me. In the old days, being able to eat things like this would have been nothing but a dream. Seeing Wang Hohat staring intently at them eating, Li Changdong simply took the money out of his pocket. He did not hand all the money over to Wang Hohat, but picked out a small portion and kept it in his pocket. There may be vegetables to buy at the state-run market tomorrow, and all the rest of the money was earned from my vegetable sales. Keep it with you and save it for me. When Wang Hohat saw that Li Changdong actually had so much money in his hand, her eyes were filled with deep shock. This. You can earn this much money just by selling vegetables? That can't be right. And what shocked Wang Hohat even more was not this, but that Li Changdong was letting her keep the money, which was simply the most astonishing thing of all. Seeing the look of shock all over Wang Hohat's face, Li Changdong said, "Our money will only keep increasing from now on, so you must keep it safe. Don't let any go missing." After they finished talking, he lowered his head to look and found there was no sign of the roast duck left on the table. Turning to look at Wang Ergu and his daughter, he found the two of them fiercely fighting over the last tiny bit of duck breast. Li Changdong split the meat in half and placed it on the two of their plates. "We'll be buying things like this often in the future, and you're the older brother, so you need to look after your younger sister." Wang Hohat nodded in agreement. "That's right. You have to take good care of your younger sister. Don't let her suffer." Seeing the sky gradually grow dim, Li Changdong locked the room door and took the two little ones back to the room to rest. The next day, early morning, Wang Hohat was busy in the kitchen, while Li Changdong came out of the room dressed in formal clothes. Looking at Wang Hohat's back, he said, "I'm going to the state-run market. Don't run around everywhere." At present, quite a few people in the village were jealous of them, thinking the way they got money was very improper. If they could follow behind Li Changdong, they might even earn a little pocket money. Seeing that Li Changdong was about to leave, Wang Hohat hurried out of the kitchen, not even putting down the spatula in her hand. "How about eating some noodles before you go?" No need. I'm in a hurry. The state-run market only has such a tiny window that's considered prime time. If I miss it, it'll be gone." Watching Li Changdong leave the house, Wang Hohat felt somewhat sorry for the man. However, she also noticed that something was off about Li Changdong and slowly walked in his direction. She watched him disappear at the end of the street before returning to the room to wake Wang Ergu and her daughter. Soon, Li Changdong arrived at the state-run market. Sure enough, the old farmer was looking around at the entrance, seemingly waiting for Li Changdong to come. Looking at the old farmer's face, Li Changdong walked up to him with a smile all over his face. "Morning." The old farmer nodded honestly, gestured with his chin toward the vegetables beside him, and rubbed his hands together. From the way he looked, he seemed worried that Li Changdong might not want vegetables like these. Li Changdong felt his pocket and looked at the handcart at the street corner. "I'll go get a handcart. I can't carry this like this." When the old farmer saw Li Changdong about to leave, he hurriedly picked up his shoulder pole and followed behind him. If this big customer left, there would be no reason for him to come back. The two arrived at the handcart, and Wang Yi recognized Li Changdong at a glance and gave a slight nod in greeting. As expected, paying and not paying brought two completely different kinds of treatment. He signaled to the old farmer to put all the vegetables onto the handcart. "How much is it all together?" "These are all vegetables I grew myself. Same as yesterday. Just give me a little based on what you think is fair." If not for Li Changdong's help, there was no way he could have sold all these vegetables. Seeing the old farmer's simple and honest manner, Li Changdong paid according to yesterday's market price. As he watched the man count the money with trembling hands, other scenes surfaced in Li Changdong's mind. "Do you have any game over there? Don't tell me you mean those." Seeing the look on the old farmer's face, Li Changdong realized he had misunderstood him. "Don't get me wrong. I'm a legitimate businessman. I mean things like pheasants and wild rabbits. These kinds of things taste good, and since they're relatively scarce, I could get some back." When the old farmer heard that Li Changdong needed such things, his brows furrowed deeply. I'll have to go back to the village and ask. I'm just a vegetable grower. I haven't paid attention to those things." Since the old farmer agreed to help ask around, how could Li Changdong let him do it for nothing? As long as you can help me get them, I'll give you 1/10 of the profit from each one. I'm counting on you. When the old farmer learned that he could earn money just by asking around, his face was filled with shock. I've been honest and dutiful all my life. I've never heard of making money like this, so of course he felt very conflicted inside. Seeing the old farmer about to leave with his shoulder pole, Li Changdong casually glanced toward the market and, sure enough, noticed several people at the entrance staring fixedly at the old farmer. It was obvious they were equally curious about how Li Changdong was somehow making money. If the old farmer was targeted by these thug-like people, he might really be in danger. Wait, the old farmer, worried that Li Changdong wanted to return the goods, glanced at him tremblingly. Those vegetables of mine are all homegrown, with no pesticides. That's not what I mean. You're too conspicuous at the entrance of the state-run market. I'm worried other people will set their sights on you. Let's trade somewhere else from now on. When he heard that Li Changdong would take everything he had, his face lit up with joy, and he agreed at once. Looking around, he said, then let's change the trading place. From now on, let's meet at the entrance of that alley. I'll go take a look there every day when I come into town. The old farmer naturally agreed and left carrying his shoulder pole. As for whether those hooligans would go trouble the old farmer, that was no longer something Li Changdong could worry about. He came once again to the entrance of Ziwei Homestyle Restaurant, greeted Qin Yin inside, and pulled the handcart to Jixiang Garden. Sure enough, the old men and women inside had been waiting for him early on. When they saw that the cute little girl hadn't come, they looked toward the entrance curiously. Where's that little girl from yesterday? Why didn't she come with you? Li Changdong wiped the sweat from his forehead and answered truthfully, that's my daughter. She's studying during this period, but she might come in a few days. When they learned that the girl would come here in a few days, they turned their attention to the vegetables. Just like yesterday, each vegetable still had mud on it, clearly having just been pulled from the ground. With vegetables like these, they felt very reassured eating them. Before long, the cart full of vegetables was completely sold out. Looking at the money in his hand, he happily walked outside. After returning the handcart, he arrived at the roast duck shop in trance, but didn't buy anything. No matter how good something is, after buying it once or twice, you'll get tired of it. Besides, even the village chief doesn't get the treatment of feasting on rich meat and fish every day. If he were feasting on rich meat and fish every day, he would definitely attract other people's jealousy. He returned to the village empty-handed and walked toward the shop. Don't be fooled by the fact that their village isn't big. You can buy anything you need in the shop. When the owner inside saw Li Changdong come in through the door, he looked at him with a smile. Yo, isn't this Dongzi? What are you here to buy? He looked at the things in the refrigerator and pondered for a long while. Give me 4 bottles of soda and a pack of Hong Shuanxi cigarettes. He took out a small portion of separated loose change from his pocket and placed it on the table. When the owner saw Li Changdong actually pay so skillfully, his face was full of shock. Have you become a nouveau riche lately? So rich? For bottles of soda? Ordinary people who come here to buy soda usually buy 1 bottle for several people to share, and their family only has 4 people. Yet it's 1 bottle per person. Seeing the owner's surprised look, he scratched his head, pretending to be embarrassed. I got lucky and only made a tiny bit of money. Russell, the curtain beside them was lifted, and Yang Jinling walked out from inside, her tone sounding somewhat sarcastic. Everyone in our village knows that Dongzi has been making big money outside lately. Let alone these 4 bottles of soda. He could probably even afford to buy out your shop. When Li Changdong saw Yang Jinling's sarcastic manner, his reason told him something was off. When something unusual happens, there must be something behind it. He believed she was about to reveal her true colors next. Sure enough, Yang Jinling came up close to him with a smile all over her face. Look, it's so hot today. How about you treat all of us to some soda? What do you think? Li Changdong had long been prepared, so how could he possibly fall for her trick? He waved his hands repeatedly. I don't have that much money. You're thinking too highly of me.